Ronald Reagan returns to Washington one last time. The historic state funeral begins for the 40th President of the United States. Thousands line the sweltering streets of the Capitol to pay their final respects to a beloved leader. We'll give you a look at the outpouring of affection for President Reagan all over America as his passing is marked in town after town. And the Reagan legacy, one man's lifelong love affair with the American West.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting tonight from Washington.
And this is a special West Coast edition. Good evening. America's official goodbye to our 40th president, the state funeral for Ronald Reagan, has begun. The president is lying in state tonight at the United States Capitol in the glorious rotunda of the Capitol building. People from all over America will be filing past round the clock until Friday morning. Many spent hours in the hot sun today waiting for a chance to pay their respects. The president's casket was flown to Washington this afternoon from California, then taken in a procession through the streets of this city to the Capitol building. CBS's Byron Pitts begins our coverage of President Reagan's final return to Washington.
With the dignity due an American president and the emotion of a Hollywood ending, today the actor who became the governor of California and then the president of the United States began what will be his final curtain call. And this morning, as always, Nancy Reagan had her eyes on her beloved Ronnie. This morning in Southern California, the curious and the caring shared a moment in history. California is where he lived and became a star, but Washington, D.C. is where Ronald Reagan became a legendary leader. So aboard one of the 747s that serves as Air Force One, Mrs. Reagan, the president's 3 children, and his closest friends flew east. There was a simplicity to the services in California, but that's not how it's done in the nation's capital. From Andrews Air Force Base, a motorcade to downtown Washington. In a ceremony that dates back to the times of Abraham Lincoln, Mr. Reagan's casket was placed on a caisson, pulled by 6 horses. There in its shadow, a black riderless horse, a pair of Reagan's own boots reversed in the stirrups, the symbol of a fallen leader who will never ride again. All in lockstep for the slow, mile-and-a-half procession down Constitution Avenue to the Capitol. Tradition dictates 100 steps per minute, exactly 3 miles per hour. Lyndon Johnson was the last American president to make this journey in 1973, and now, as then, a nation stood still. With fighter jets overhead, one peeling off to signify loss. It's a uniquely American spectacle watched by the world. Today, united in grief and in support for former First Lady Nancy Reagan. This is the rarest of moments in Washington in American politics, a moment in which politics doesn't matter much. President Reagan will lie in state here at the Capitol from now until 7 a.m. Friday. Estimates are 5,000 people an hour will pass by his coffin. That's nearly 200,000 people before it's over. Today, there were no Republicans or Democrats gathered in the Capitol Rotunda, just Americans.
A harsh winter morning in 1985 brought the inaugural ceremony inside to this rotunda. And standing in this place for the 50th presidential inauguration, Ronald Reagan spoke of a nation that was hopeful, big-hearted, idealistic, daring, decent, and fair. That was how he saw America. And that is how America came to know him.
Vice President Dick Cheney stood in for President George W. Bush, who was attending the G8 summit in Georgia. The president will pay his respects tomorrow. But today, tomorrow, and Friday, when the country will observe a national day of mourning, all belong to Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Wilson Reagan had many roles to play in life. Husband, father, governor. But the most notable role on the world stage was that of the 40th President of the United States of America.
The great communicator, the eternal optimist. About these days, Mrs. Reagan said, quote, The outpouring of love for my husband is incredible. From humble beginnings in Tampico, Illinois, to a permanent place in history, Ronald Reagan's life was incredible. Byron Hicks, CBS News, Washington.
The climax of the state funeral will come Friday morning when President Reagan's body is taken to the National Cathedral here in Washington for a memorial service. So for the next 2 days, Wyatt Andrews reports the city will be in the spotlight.
Washington on this day wasn't just the capital city. It was transformed overnight into the theater for Reagan's farewell. The city center was shut down. Thousands of federal workers took leave, replaced by the thousands who came for the close-up chance to say goodbye.
I'm going to put my hand on my heart and stay still.
It's the least I can do to pay my respects to President Reagan. He revitalized the nation, gave us an economic boom that lasted nearly 20 years, won the Cold War.
Security was unprecedented, with police at this command center watching every bridge and major approach into the city, and with officials prepared to screen 5,000 mourners for every hour Reagan will lie in state. And this is just the security you can see. Somewhere out in the crowds, federal agents have fanned out with detection devices to sniff out radiological, nuclear, or chemical bombs. Patriot missile batteries are out on the perimeter of Washington. Combat air patrols guard the skies. In fact, just as Reagan's plane was landing, Washington's airspace was violated, and it triggered an instant evacuation of the U.S. Capitol.
Start going that way.
For 10 confused minutes, the Capitol Police had workers streaming from the building and spectators scattering from the grounds until it was learned that a Kentucky State Police plane actually had clearance and had safely landed at Reagan National Airport.
Keep going, keep going.
The only other obstacle of the day was the intense 90-degree heat. It felled several spectators and some in the honor guard, but nothing else was stopping the devoted.
One more time as he goes by.
Here, in the line to view Reagan's casket, was a young soldier and his family, a soldier just weeks away from deploying to Iraq. I want to know what you want of that moment.
I'm gonna stand there at attention, and I'm gonna salute the great man he was.
Almost everyone in this line has a thought or an emotion they will silently share in their 10 seconds with Mr. Reagan.
This is just my little way of saying thanks. Not for what you did for me, for what you did for this nation.
This will be Washington for the next day and a half. Mourners coming one by one, braving the heat and the security, and believing they owe Mr. Reagan nothing less. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Washington.
Out in the oppressive heat today, along with the tens of thousands of mourners, were 3 of our CBS News correspondents stationed along the procession route. We'll check in first tonight with Mika Brzezinski at the end of the route on Capitol Hill. Mika?
Well, Dan, Nancy Reagan stood atop the Capitol steps behind me and greeted her husband's casket. And as it passed her by, she gently touched it as it slowly passed her by. Their marriage is certainly a part of the Reagan legacy, inseparable during their more than half a century together. She stood by him as he made history as president. She stood by him as he suffered the decline of Alzheimer's. And tonight, she shares him with the nation once again. He was known for his ability to connect with his countrymen, and tonight he will do that one more time in death here at the Capitol. Dan?
Mika Brzezinski, thanks. Now from the end of the procession to where it began, CBS News White House correspondent Bill Plant is there. Good evening, Bill.
Dan, at this spot, in view of the White House, the procession came to a halt. Nancy Reagan emerged, and the crowd, which had been reverentially silent, burst into applause. She raised her hand in salute. A flicker of a smile crossed her face. And then she bowed her head and watched intently the slow, precise military drill which moved the casket from the hearse to the horse-drawn caisson. And as she returned to the car, more applause. People cried out, "We love you, Nancy." And the procession began to roll on. Dan?
Bill Plant, thanks. Well, somewhere between Bill and Mika, about midway along the procession route near the National Gallery, is CBS News correspondent Bob Orr. Bob.
Dan, this was a tough day for the thousands of people who came downtown. The heat was oppressive, temperatures in the 90s, humidity also over 90%. More than 100 people had to be treated for heat-related illnesses, but those who stayed were resolute. and those in this immediate area were treated to one of the most dramatic and poignant moments of the day's events, when 21 F-15 fighters flew directly overhead as the caisson with the flag-covered coffin rolled past here on Constitution Avenue. It was a dramatic, poignant, and it's sometimes difficult day here in Washington. Dan?
Bob Orr, thanks. With Washington in ceremonial mode, unfurling a pageant to honor a past president, the current president spent this day with other world leaders at the annual G8 Economic Summit on Sea Island, Georgia. CBS News Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is in nearby Savannah tonight with our report. John?
Dan, when he arrives back in Washington tomorrow night, President Bush will head directly to the Capitol Rotunda to pay his respects to the 40th president, and from there head over to Blair House to spend some private time with Nancy Reagan. Mr. Bush has also been working this week on the eulogy that he'll deliver on Friday morning. But with G8 leaders today, his focus remained on attempts to rally support for his plans to rebuild Iraq.
With the muscle of a unanimous Security Council resolution behind him, President Bush today elevated Iraq's new president onto the global stage.
I really never thought I'd be sitting next to an Iraqi president of a free country a year and a half ago.
I'd like to express to you the commitment of the Iraqi people to move toward democracy.
The intent is to make President Ghazi appear a player, not a puppet, placing him prominently among the world's most powerful leaders. And Mr. Bush put pressure on his biggest allies to help ensure that Iraq is secure enough for democracy to flourish.
We believe NATO ought to be involved. We will work with our NATO friends to at least continue the role that now exists, and hopefully expand it somewhat.
That declaration set off alarm bells with the French president, who felt slighted by what seemed an attempt to make him look bad. France has fiercely refused to join NATO efforts on the ground in Iraq.
I do not believe that it is NATO's purpose to intervene in Iraq.
The new rift appeared to shake the unity shown just yesterday at the United Nations. And the president's attempts to reach out to Middle East leaders also hit a snag. While President Bush warmly welcomed Arab heads of state for talks on his broader push for democracy in the Middle East, even joking with Yemen's president about his ceremonial dagger, big players like Saudi Arabia and Egypt refused to attend.
But on balance, the news about Iraq for President Bush this week has been mostly good, providing him a much-needed lift both diplomatically and politically at a time when a former president's moral clarity and decisive leadership has been center stage. Dan?
John Roberts reporting live from Savannah, Georgia. Thanks, John. In Iraq today, saboteurs struck the power system. They bombed a northern oil pipeline, setting off a big fire and reducing fuel supplies to Iraq's electrical grid. On the political front, leaders of Iraq's Kurdish minority are angry that the new UN Security Council resolution on Iraq's future fails to guarantee Kurdish autonomy. Without such a guarantee, they threaten to pull out of the Iraqi government. A prosecutor in Italy said today he has given U.S. authorities wiretap transcripts that may involve a terror plot in the United States. Italian police recorded phone conversations by an Egyptian terror suspect arrested this week in Milan. One reported refers to a woman said to be plotting a chemical attack inside the U.S. Coming up next here on the CBS Evening News, Olympic hopefuls under investigation. Did or did not 4 of America's top track and field stars use performance-enhancing drugs? We'll give you the inside story. And then later, Ronald Reagan's roots were in Illinois, but his real love was the Great West. How that love helped define the Reagan presidency in our series, The Legacy. But first, CBS News honors fallen heroes. Jesse Theory. His high school principal remembers him as an energetic kid. He ran track and wrestled and hoped to wrestle on the U.S. Marine team as well. Theory volunteered to go to Iraq and was proud to be serving his country. He was planning to marry his high school sweetheart next year. Theory is survived by her and by his parents and 7 siblings.
The Alzheimer's Foundation of America cares about individuals with Alzheimer's disease and their families. From coast to coast, AFA members provide cutting-edge support services to improve quality of life. We stand ready to help all those ravaged by this cruel disease.
My grandmother.
My wife.
My aunt.
Me.
I hate you.
Why didn't you just leave me alone?
I can't believe you went to my room! It's my room!
I hate you!
You're grounding me!
You can't ground me!
It's just a little pot!
It's just a little pot!
Afraid of a few slammed doors? Get over it.
You ready to do this?
Yeah. Because to help your kid with their problem, first you have to get over yours.
That's Stan and Jill Foster's place. They were the first to go. And then Carol Pierce, the Cohens. The Schwab kids lost their mom, their aunt, their sister, all in a month. That was a tough one. We've had no support. We're losing. People are dying.
They're calling about the AIDS crisis?
Tell them we're not interested. Hi.
What? What?
Several of America's best athletes are facing the possibility they may not be allowed to run for Olympic gold at the Summer Games in Athens. They're under suspicion, even though none has tested positive for drugs to pump up their athletic skills. CBS's John Blackstone has the inside story on this running investigation.
The latest accusations of performance-enhancing drug use strike at the very top of America's Olympic hopefuls in track and field. The world's fastest man, Tim Montgomery, along with sprint champion Michelle Collins, and Olympic medalists Alvin Harrison and Christy Gaines. All have been notified by the U.S. anti-doping agency they could be banned from the Olympics this summer in Athens. They all have connections to Balco, the Bay Area Laboratory Cooperative, which investigators charge was the source of a designer's steroid called THG that could not be detected by standard drug tests.
Elite athletes, especially in big money sports, do not do cowboy chemistry, meaning by themselves.
Documents link Montgomery to Balco in 2002 when he set the world record in the 100 meters. Montgomery lives with Olympic sprint champion Marion Jones. Investigators now seem to be pursuing this case in much the same way they go after other kinds of drug dealers, by looking for somebody on the inside to testify against others.
Coaches won't talk about it. The athletes won't talk about it.
But sprinter Kelly White, who's already been banned from competition, is expected to cooperate in the anti-doping agency's investigation. Victor Conte, Balco's founder, is said to be open to a deal to name athletes if it keeps them out of jail. Conte's most prominent client, San Francisco giant Barry Bonds, says he's never taken the drugs.
They test me every day if they choose to.
Bonds' former manager says coaches can't be drug cops.
Who am I, the FBI? I ain't the FBI. I'm not the DEA.
The four newly accused Olympic athletes have never actually failed a drug test, but they could still be banned from competition in this unprecedented attack on drugs in sport. John Blackstone, CBS News, San Francisco.
It's well known that Ronald Reagan battled Alzheimer's for 10 years before he died. And Nancy Reagan has publicly asked President Bush to expand controversial stem cell research that might help treat the disease. Today, CBS's Bill Plant asked present First Lady Laura Bush about Mrs. Reagan's request.
And of course, she's now pushing to have the restrictions on stem cell use removed, the restrictions that the president put on 3 years ago, because she feels that it could help patients with diseases like Alzheimer's.
Well, there are stem cells to do research on, and we have to be really careful between what we want to do for science and what we should do ethically. And stem cell issue is certainly one of those issues that we need to treat very carefully.
So you're not prepared to endorse that?
No.
Laura Bush added she admires Nancy Reagan as a role model for families and caregivers of Alzheimer's patients. Mrs. Bush's father died from Alzheimer's in 1995. Though Ronald Reagan was born in the plains of the Midwest, he will forever be identified with the rugged landscape of the far West and the rugged, almost mythic individualism it represents. CBS's Jerry Bowen reports the West was at the heart of the message so important to the Reagan legacy.
It is one of the enduring images of the late president, Ronald Reagan atop his horse at his California ranch, a man of the West. But it was something more, a political statement. For Reagan, the West was a powerful symbol.
This image of the West offered what it offered to everybody through the 19th and early 20th century, the opportunity to recreate yourself.
Like tens of thousands of others, Reagan was drawn west to California in the 1930s, a region of America that offered the hope of jobs and a better life. Truly a land of wide open spaces.
It inspired his whole persona, which you saw creep into his language of all his speeches about the sense of openness and opportunity there was in America. That's the opportunity and hope he had when he came to California in the 30s as a wide-eyed young man and succeeded in his world.
He succeeded as an actor, sometimes playing a cowboy in the movies, and he took that Old West imagery into politics, creating a bold message that appealed to the new West.
He spoke very powerfully to those people. He was ultimately a man of suburbia, the suburbs, using the Wild West or the frontier as his imagery.
And when he took that message to the national stage, it resonated. Voters grabbed onto this idea of a land of wide open opportunity.
That's why when he went back to Washington, he always talked about starting a prairie fire.
We lit a prairie fire a few years back. Those flames were fed by passionate ideas and convictions, and we were determined to make them burn all across America.
So the Midwesterner who reinvented himself as a man of Western values convinced a party and a people that those values still held.
At the core of the West is a profound and powerful American message. And Ronald Reagan took that message of hope and he returned it to the nation at large. Ronald Reagan renationalized the West, made it extend its message from sea to shining sea.
It's part of his legacy, the Western legacy, his belief that it's always possible to get a piece of the American dream. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Los Angeles.
I'll be back with more from Washington in just a moment.
Ah, fun in the sun. Sure, you didn't mean to get burned. Well, so what if you weren't at the beach? You were still outdoors. Oh, so into the game, you didn't think. Well, heads up and think about this. Even a few serious sunburns can increase your risk of getting skin cancer. Protect the skin you're in. Hey, choose your cover.
You might take meth because of how it feels. But this is how it feels to your heart. The only difference is you can't rebuild a heart.
While the focus of America's farewell to Ronald Reagan is here in Washington now, people all over the country are remembering and paying tribute to the former president in many different ways. CBS's Lee Cowan reports.
It was one of the many moments in many places today when pictures offered some peace. When the lunch crowd at the Chit and Chat coffee shop in Iowa put down their cups and paused. Whether it was a memorial in Oklahoma City or just a quiet moment in front of a portrait.
He really was one of us, down to earth, as we say here in Texas.
He referred to the president as our moral teacher.
Even those too young to remember are watching a country unite in grief.
It shows that he did make America stronger in ways, and he still can, even after death.
For those far away from today's official ceremonies, there were smaller gestures of respect. Books of condolence offered in Minnesota, the only state Reagan never won. Or this new exhibit, Hurley hammered up in Odessa, Texas, Mr. Bush's hometown.
A lot of people feel like they felt like they were friends with the president, even though they've never met the man.
In part, it was his humor that struck the heartland. But Melba King was struck by his courage.
And that's when the fella then said, "Give me your money."
She was walking home from nursing school 71 years ago when Mr. Reagan, then an Iowa radio personality, grabbed a gun and saved her from a robber.
He said, "Leave her alone. I'll shoot you right between the shoulders."
When he finally saw her again years later, the president downplayed it all.
The gun was empty. I didn't have any cartridges. If he hadn't have run when I told him to, I was going to have to throw it at him.
Although he may have been a bi-coastal president, spending his time between Washington and California, he still never forgot his upbringing in the Midwest. In fact, he described it this way. He said, "Although our family wasn't exactly from the wrong side of the tracks, we were certainly always within the sound of the train whistle." In the end, President Reagan may not have remembered all the lives he touched, but even a healthy memory would have trouble comprehending the depth of gratitude so many are now trying to show. Lee Cowan, CBS News, Dallas.
What we're seeing this week around the nation and here in Washington is rather rare. Americans, by long tradition, are not inclined to treat our leaders as royalty. No, this is as close as we get. Processions and parades in honor of a president come only to mark the beginning of his term, and sometimes to mark the end of his life. Why did so many Americans wait in long lines, late into the night, and under a blazing sun to get a glimpse of Ronald Reagan's casket? In part, it was out of respect for the great office he held.
So help me God.
And all it symbolizes for this country. But there's no doubt it also was about the man himself. A man who won over a nation with his easy smile, simple elegance, and plain talk. Whether you were with him or against him, you knew where he stood. And when he said,
"My fellow Americans,"
well, he really did seem like one of us, a neighbor. So as neighbors line up into the night to see President Reagan's casket there at the Capitol, Dan Rather reporting for the CBS Evening News. Good night from Washington.
This is CBS.